My name is John Vollen. I'm the Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Maine and at the University of Chias. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you this morning. I'm going to help with moderation this morning, and I'll turn it over to Keith later on. But first, it is my pleasure to be able to introduce Rick Miller. I think everyone here probably knows Rick. But I'm going to give you a little bit of history. So Rick was appointed president and first employee of Olin College of Engineering in 1999. How many of you have first employee behind their name? It's a pretty amazing title. 21 years later, Rick became president emeritus in the summer of 2020, and then professor of mechanical engineering. He served for the next 2 years as the Jerome C. Hunziker, visiting professor of aerospace systems at MIT. Prior to starting a new, highly successful college, Rick served as Dean of Engineering at the University of Iowa. Sorry, Rick, I almost said Iowa State, but no, University of Iowa. He's Associate Dean of Engineering at USC in Los Angeles, and he had started his academic career at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I would like to say a few additional notable achievements and awards that he's received over the years. These include being a fellow at the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, a fellow at the National Academy of Inventors. That must be, your grandkids must be really proud of that one. That's really cool. He's an elected member of the National Academy of Engineering, co-founder of the Grand Challenges Scholars Program that so many of you have been involved in over the years, and he has received the National Academy of Engineering's Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education, twice. 2013 and again last year in 2022. Finally, Rick is the co-founder of this coalition, the Coalition for Life Transformative Education. And if that wasn't enough, I'd like to say on a personal note, Rick is someone that truly cares. He is a passionate advocate for higher education and student success. As we all are aware, the majority of Americans today believe higher education is not going in the right path. And Rick is determined to help change this narrative, and that's one of the reasons I think we're all here today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our friend and colleague, Rick Miller.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. This is really a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And thank you, John, for that very generous introduction. I think my wife's version of it would be, see, I told you you couldn't keep a job. You keep moving. I want to tell you a number of things about why this organization exists, what we hope to do going forward, and what we hope that you'll get out of this meeting. But before I do that, I have to thank a lot of people, because we wouldn't be in this room if it weren't for the extraordinary work and support of a number of people. The first group I want to thank is the Arizona State University Events Planning Team, who did incredible work to make this happen. I don't know if they're hiding out somewhere. Nancy Gonzalez, whom you'll meet at dinner tonight, the EVP and Provost of Arizona State University, just took this unreasonable idea that we had to have this conference and do it like 2 months after we had announced the speakers. Normally people do that with about a year's notice, and said, we'll do it. And we'll do it in March, and we'll do it here at Arizona State. So her team, and I won't get all the names, but forgive me, Becky Eisenberg, Delane Williamson, Kevin Kowaleski, Natalie Gobig, and 3 or 4 more whose names just escaped me this morning, just did everything. Even though it was unreasonable and we didn't have time, they just said, we'll take care of it. And they have. This is a team to die for. So this conference wouldn't have happened, literally, if it weren't for their over-the-top support. The other team, yes. The other team that has been working nonstop for most of a year is the Conference Planning Committee. Contrary to popular belief, we hadn't been asleep until last fall, and that's in being slow to get around to this. We've been doing a few other things, which I'll tell you about, including forming a new journal, forming an alliance with the AAC&U, and I see that President Pasquarella is here and will be speaking later. Again, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for their support, and it's all happened in the last year. But this planning committee has been amazing, and this includes Keith Buffington from Bucknell, John Volin, who we just met from Maine, Marjorie Malpede in the red outfit from Mary Christie Institute, and two more who aren't here, Ashley Finley, who is a vice president of the AAC&U and has a day job of running conferences like this like 3 times a week, couldn't be here. And then Clayton Spencer, who's the president of Bates College, who's been incredibly helpful to us. She has the best excuse for absence I have ever heard. She called me up on the weekend and said, I can't be here because my daughter is giving birth on Monday to our first grandchild, and I'm not missing that. She's scheduling a C-section that wasn't planned ahead of time, and so we'll miss her, but she hopefully will be able to participate by Zoom during the conference as we go forward. Okay. Let me try to explain exactly who and what the CLTE is, because a lot of people have not had any encounter with this group yet. We are not exactly a household word. In fact, speaking of words, CLTE is a kludgy thing that doesn't exactly roll off your tongue, and it's even worse if you say all the words. It's because we have a bunch of engineers who helped invent the thing. Engineers are much better with numbers than words, so we're looking for better ways of describing this. So if you have a better way, please send me a note. The Coalition for Life Transformative Education, you'll find, is a community of university leaders who are committed to experimenting individually and collectively, sharing best practices and collaborating to start a movement across America to ensure that all students who enroll in college not only complete a degree, but also have a transforming educational experience that enhances their well-being and work engagement throughout life. That's what it says on our website, and I think that's pretty much what brings us together. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this group got started, which will give you, I think, some sense of the fragility and the power at the same time of what's happening. This started some years ago when I was president at Olin, and sitting on this stage at commencement, we watched the kids get their diploma. For 21 years I was doing that, and you could see from my seat, it was really clear they didn't just get a diploma that says you're an engineer. And I got these letters from parents that said, what did you do to my kid? We dropped off this geeky kid 4 years ago. They were pretty good at math. But they had not been on a date before. We were hopeful they wouldn't live in our basement and get a job. And now they're ready to go on the TED stage. I mean, they're literally a different person than they were when we came. And if you're a college president, there's a number in the room. You're kind of like a priest. People share things with you that they won't share with anyone else. And you can't do anything with it, so you just accumulate this stuff. And I began to feel there's an obligation here. And on the sign outside the front of the college when you drive in, it says Olin College of Engineering. So this is about producing engineers. And I kept thinking, but this is a much bigger issue than engineering, and concluded that while I still had a few grains of sand left in my hourglass, I had sort of a moral obligation to do something about this. And I'm not sure that it's fair to Olin to try to drag them in this direction. Don't know what to do. And then the Kern Family Foundation came along. A number of you may know about the Kern Family Foundation. In fact, Mr. Kern just passed away last summer. Amazing guy. They've had a huge footprint in higher education, especially here at Arizona State University. They've made a big impact as well. And their president, Jim Ron, had been poking me for a couple of years to do something like this. He said, we have been supporting this group that's reinventing medical education. It's called the Kern National Network for Character and Caring in Medicine. I don't know if you know this, but of all the professions, medicine has the highest suicide rate of any of them. It's higher suicide rate both for students and for faculty. There's a lot of things that are not going well. And then, of course, post-human genome, the value system shifted, and the most important person in the medical school is the one with the Nobel Prize. It's not necessarily the one in the clinic who reads patients. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. So we met them, and they said, yeah, there's a really interesting group. And he said, you should do that for all of undergraduate education. And I said, but Jim, who would listen to me? I mean, I wouldn't listen to me, all right? This is crazy. I'm from the engineering school, and I've been on the faculty at the University of California, University of Southern California, University of Iowa. These are big schools. Engineering is sort of known as that vocational program on campus, you know, where you learn how to fix cars and TVs. It's kind of what my aunt and uncle think. Why would you take a call from a guy with that background who says they wanted to change education for everyone? He said, just do it. So I made a call, this is June 9, 2017. I called, who do you know? I mean, they're former colleagues and friends. Some of you are in this room. Would you meet me at Chicago O'Hare for one day to talk about some data which we had seen? The Gallup-Purdue Index. I don't know if you know about this. It came out, I think, in 2014. Largest survey of alumni in American history. What really matters in higher ed? And the two things that were like just gut-wrenching. I mean, I was kind of hoping, to be honest, that they would talk about free body diagrams and engineering. You know, it didn't make it on the radar. The two things that showed up, somebody cared about me as a person, and I had a chance to apply what I learned in the real world context while I'm still a student. So that college is not about books and tests, but college is about life. Right now. You don't have to have a PhD from Harvard to start doing something about the world. You can do it now. So we got to talk about this. And so we brought Brandon Bustede from Gallup, who had engineered that survey. We brought him to the meeting to explain it to us. And by the way, I needed half a dozen people, according to my friends in medicine, not having any confidence. I invited 12, figuring maybe half will come. We had 20 people in Chicago. Nobody said no, and they brought a few friends. And it's been like that because this is so important. Other people see this as well. And we also needed somebody to help us figure out how to frame this. So I invited Carol Dweck. I don't know if you know who Carol Dweck is at Stanford. She's a professor of psychology who's written a number of books on mindset. So Carol came, and one of her colleagues, and we met for a day. At the end of the day, we could not imagine the energy in the room. There was a uniform head nodding. Everybody said, yes, we see this. There's one piece of data I didn't tell you about, which was just devastating. You found that those students who reported, those alumni who reported that somebody cared about me as a person when I was at my school, and I had an opportunity to get involved and engaged with life, not just with books and tests, doubled their well-being later in life. But only 3% of the college students in America said they got that in college. And we have gone around the room, these like presidents and provosts of universities, and everybody was convinced, well, that's happening at my school. I see it all the time. Well, the students don't know about it, okay? We can do better. We have to do better at this. It's a moral imperative. We met for a few more times, had more speakers, and we finally concluded, getting a bunch of college presidents and provosts in a room and nodding our heads is not going to change the world. It's really faculty and students and staff that have to do this. So we have to find a way to get people to engage with this and to develop solutions on their own campus. And one of the few benefits of being my age and having been all these different schools is you can't help but notice a few things along the way. One of the things I noticed, you know that old saying, not invented here? I think it was invented here in higher education, because we don't pay attention to what other universities do. If we didn't invent it, it's like not relevant for us. So rather than write a book and point to it and say, this is the way, everybody follow me, we said, no, let's not do that. Let's inspire people to invent their own approach to this. We abstracted from the Gallup data what we thought were the main lessons about identity, development, and belonging, which is the #1 concern of college students in America today, according to Howard Gardner and his work. Agency, which is the empowerment of students to take charge and do something in their life now, which is what we interpreted the data that says, I got an opportunity to apply what I learned now while I'm still a student. And finally, purpose, which was a gift that we got from Bates College Purposeful Work Project when we saw those three things, identity, agency, and purpose. We'll give you a miniature grant, which isn't, I don't even want to talk about the size because it's so small, it's in the round-off error of every university I know. But, you know, it's a grant, so you can put it on your resume, and faculty committees don't notice this. If you do it right, they don't notice the size of the dollars, and it'll be respected. We did that with 15 universities, and we had our first conference in September of 21. In the middle of COVID, we were not in the same room. It was all on Zoom. That's the last that we had done. So this is how we got here. And now we are looking to the future. So let me tell you a little bit about mission and purpose, and how this has evolved and where it's going now. We think that there's a grand challenge in higher education now as a result of this, and it's flashing red lights on the dashboard. Over the past decade, colleges and universities have focused their efforts on student success as measured by increased graduation rates, reduced time to degree, retention rates, starting salaries, size of our endowment, the record of our football team, how many Nobel Prize winners we have, all these sorts of accoutrements, but not the central issue. These led to major gains, so I don't want to say that this is completely irrelevant. Of course, it's not a good thing to enroll a bunch of kids who never graduate, but graduation is not the end of the road. Graduation is sort of like getting you the track shoes to enter the marathon of life. It's not the finish line, and it shouldn't be our finish line. The goal is as appropriate to small liberal arts colleges as it is to regional and national public flagships, with the dual mission of human development and workforce development. And I think we forget this. Too often, certainly I've seen it in my career, universities, the way they're actually run, who chooses the department chair, who chooses the dean and the president is usually a faculty committee. They're usually of the faculty, by the faculty, and for the faculty. And it's served us pretty well as a nation. There's still more people come here from other countries than other places, but there are more stakeholders. We also have students, which we're learning about now. We have alumni. Now, as you'll see if you look around, we have regents. We have people in the public who spend dollars to subsidize public higher education. They're our stakeholders too. And it's time we began to notice that. Our job is not just to get them a college degree. Our job is to prepare them for engagement in the workplace for the rest of their life. That's a part of the mission that everybody in society resonates with. I don't know if I've ever met a college student who didn't expect to be better prepared for a career when they graduated. Do you know one? We don't talk about that very much. Yet, and I've noticed on some campuses, talking about the work that people get when they graduate, work is a four-letter word, particularly on college campuses. We have higher meaning than that, right? We're going to teach your soul and your spirit, which is all really good, but don't forget, they have to pay somebody back for this debt that we're going as well. That's our problem as well. So what we're doing is creating a community, a learning community, which is committed to experimenting on our own campus, because every one of us has a different group of stakeholders with a different mission, ranging from Harvard to high school, essentially. We have a mission to meet. And we can do a better job of it if we try things that we haven't thought about yet. If we do this for a particular purpose, and we measure what we're doing. I think if you don't assess what you're doing, you're fooling yourself if you think it's going to be helpful. You remember years ago, the first book, no, I think this was during the Reagan years. People were really concerned about the percentage of American youth that get involved in drugs. So we had a national movement that started, Just Say No. Remember the Just Say No thing? A little button on your shirt? Well, guess what? If you do the math, it didn't work, okay? People are not saying no. It's more complicated than that. We don't want to be known as, the coalition for Just Say No. We need to be smarter than that. There are movements that have worked. The percentage of Americans who are involved in smoking today is much lower than it was a generation ago. It takes time. We need to be a movement that achieves that kind of an outcome. In fact, we've talked about this, our public health kind of model for thinking about change in higher education that touches all students and all institutions. We're going to be looking for essentially the fluoride we can put in the water that prevents cavities for everyone. Okay? There are better things we can be doing. The bigger picture. The work of the coalition is obviously idealistic, and it's well-intended. No one has ever accused me of being reasonable at anything that I've done. Just talk to my wife about that. We hope to enhance the awareness and the commitment to student well-being and to alumni outcomes everywhere in this sense. That, of course, we began this in 2017, was a nice to have. We sort of felt morally obligated. We can do better than this. We've seen better than this. We've seen the transformation happen in our own kids. We should be committed to it. It's a nice to have thing in higher ed. But that's changed. I think recent trends, both in higher education and the nation as a whole, make the coalition into a must-have. The country needs this now, and I think the time is limited. I'm going to talk about 4 unprecedented red lights flashing on the dashboard today that we ignore at our own peril. Number 1, the Pew Research Center. Most Americans think higher education is headed in the wrong direction. And most Republicans think the country would be better off without higher education, full stop. We used to think this was not credible. I don't think people are saying it's not credible now. If you look at what's happening to budgets and look at what's happening in different states, banning books, eliminating tenure, the hostility on campus for free thinking has never been this high in my lifetime. We better not ignore this. Is there something we can do to help change the narrative so that it doesn't go further down this path? And then the CDC explained for the first time the number 2 cause of death for those aged 15 to 29 in the U.S. for the first time is suicide. If this has happened to you, if you know someone on your campus that's done this, there's no way you can fill that hole. This is, I mean, we've seen this up close, even at Olin. the trauma is just leaves you speechless. This is not changing. If it's not a short-term thing, it's been growing since 2008. It's not an American thing. You're seeing this on other continents. I don't know what's causing this, but I know that you better not ignore it. I know you can't take those lecture notes from the 1980s and walk on stage and teach calculus the same way you did before and expect the same outcomes. That doesn't work. This is changing who we are. It's our mission. We have them on our campus when they're that age. And then, of course, there's the U.S. Department of Education, college scorecard data, which our friend Anthony Carnevale at Georgetown reported last year. For the first time, about 1 in 3 colleges in the U.S. have the distinction that the majority of the students they enrolled 10 years ago would have been better off not to have enrolled in college at all. Think about that. Can you see how the dots connect with the Pew Research Center data? Remember, only 1 in 3 Americans has a college degree, so what they know about it is what they find out from their friends and from their own kids. If 1 in 3 colleges has the distinction that their kids would have been better off if they'd not enrolled, the public is not going to view this as a public good. Why are you doing this then? To make your endowment bigger? What's the deal? We can do better than this. And then there's, of course, the elephant in the room, a half century of interventions like affirmative action, trying to improve the representation of underrepresented people in America, has not only been disappointing, it's essentially not moved the needle at all. Representation of underprivileged groups among college graduates remains unacceptably low and is apparently pretty resistant to all of the traditional ways of dealing with it that we have been working on. We have to do better. These are red lights flashing on the dashboard. I think this means that the social contract between higher education and society is failing. The politicians are really keen on this. You try to get money for a new building in your state now. We have to change the narrative. We have to reposition higher education as an unquestioned public good. How could that happen? I can imagine that a family in some rural state says, well, I'm not sure I agree with all the elite thinking that's going on in these top universities, but you know, XYZ State College, where I sent my daughter, changed her life. She's a nurse now. Nobody in our family has had that kind of an income. It's been the best thing that ever happened in our family. Those people actually care about our kids, and I'll send all of my kids to that school. If that's what we're known for, I think we have a chance to turn this around. So how are you going to do that? Well, we need to make sure that our primary mission is not winning the Nobel Prize. It's cool if you can do that. We still need Nobel Prizes. I'm not saying there's anything negative about research. But when it becomes the reason why you go to your office and the students are just a nuisance that you have to deal with while you're closing the door to write that paper for the Nobel Prize, something's wrong, okay? Something's fundamentally wrong. Our primary focus needs to be on the well-being of our students and their success. And you know, I think you're going to hear from a whole group of speakers at this conference and people around the tables here who believe that, who have lived that, who have been doing that their whole career. How we're doing this now, and we're going to talk about this at the end, we have 3 primary strategies. Number 1, we focus on evidence-based interventions. We're looking for things that you have more than just a hope might work. We're looking for things that have evidence, that have some assessment that points you in the direction that if you do it this way, this is better than just say no, okay? This is a method that's going to reduce smoking in the long run, evidence-based. Number 2, we only support projects or elevate them and put them on our stage if they scale to all enrolled students, okay, there's a need for all kinds of interventions. Don't get me wrong, because we don't put them on stage doesn't mean they don't belong on stage, and there are other people that do this. But scaling to all enrolled students means that we don't focus primarily on talented and gifted programs, okay? So we don't have a whole lot of, this is for leadership for the top 10% who are going to be the quarterback on the football team. We will not worry about those who are on defense or blockers, but this is for everybody. We also don't focus on the other end of the spectrum. These are the people who were underprivileged when they came in and they need special help. Those are huge problems. We really need them. Lots of people are doing that. Our primary focus is projects that scale to all, okay? This is one of the reasons why you'll see a predominance in the agenda for this meeting of large public universities, because something like 80% of the undergraduate students in America are educated in large public institutions. That's where they go. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the University of California, when I got to go for free. Lastly, we're primarily interested in impact long after the college years. So it's great to get to the finish line and get a college degree, but that's like the beginning of the marathon in life, not the end. We're interested in those interventions that show up 10, 20, 30 years later, producing well-being, both in the workplace, engaged workforce, and also in your personal life. The compass that we've been using has 5 dimensions to it. It's the Gallup Index, which they've been doing well-being for 80 years, I think. For example, the happiest countries on the planet. Have you heard about that? They've been studying those for a long time. What are their 5 dimensions? Well, one of them has to do with health, which is mental health and physical health. Another one has to do with financial well-being. So it's not about becoming a hedge fund manager in New York. It's about becoming financially secure so that you don't have anxiety about where you'll sleep tonight, where you'll find food for tomorrow. Number 3 is about having love in your life, social well-being. Somebody cares about you as a person. Number 4 is about community and engagement. Have you heard about citizenship? It's just like something that used to happen in America. This is part of the Gallup Wellbeing Index. And the last one, which is probably the power tool in the set, is about purpose and meaning. Okay? My life has purpose. I have something that matters that I'm here to achieve. Those 5 things, that's what we're looking for. What you'll hear about in the next 2 days, and I'm not going to try to go over the whole agenda because we're already at 9, is to essentially say we have some of the brightest stars in the country that are going to tell you about their work. You know you're onto something when you can't close the list of speakers because there's too many that should be on stage that you just, can't we just make it another half day so we can get these people on stage? They are just, I mean, I am thrilled that they're here, and I think you will be too. Again, there are a lot of these have to do, there's a pattern here, a concept or an idea about changing the narrative and value system in higher ed that's then followed by an example of how you can take that idea and implement it at scale at a large state institution. That's what we're talking about. So you'll see that repeated. We also are quite concerned about assessment. How do we know that it works? By the way, I don't know of a stopwatch for this that we can use that adequately tells you these people have great well-being and those people don't, or if you tried that intervention and it's 72% effective. We're still building the tool. We need your help. I'm not sure that it's about a survey. It may need deeper qualitative research in terms of interviews for 1,000 people over time. I don't know, but you'll hear about that because we're really serious about assessing what we do. And finally, I hope you don't leave before the conference is over because the last session is the most important one for us. We're providing you this sort of buffet table of ideas and people and opportunities to learn. And the payoff for us is the last hour, where we're going to ask you to get in small groups and to consider themes and talk to us about what you have not seen that you should have seen, things that we should be doing that you didn't see happening, ideas that need to be explored that we need your help with. So we're going to ask you to do that near the end. So that's what I wanted to say about welcoming you. I still say I am the luckiest person on the planet to be here today, and to be with you today, and to have you as thought partners in what I think is the most important calling in my career. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.